Hi everyone, Lisa Peterson again. And the response to my video about leaving my financial advisor career was completely mind-blowing. Over 61,000 have watched it so far, and I'm truly grateful for your questions, your comments, your engagement. But there's a crucial part of my story I haven't shared yet, and it has to do with how I was able to manage walking away from my career in my late 40s with a financial safety net. But today I wanted to take you on a journey through my past. I'm guessing it's going to take a couple parts to be able to share it all, but a journey that might surprise you. One I feel compelled to share. A friend encouraged me to open up about this, and honestly, it feels strange. Part of me wishes that none of what I'm about to share was true, but it is. Here's the thing, while my story might shock some people, I'm pretty sure it's not that unusual. I know that there are many of you out there who could probably relate, and that's exactly why I'm sharing this. For those of you who have had similar experiences, and also that there's a bit of craziness in all of this. And I hid my backstory for much of my life because of how ashamed I was of what it was like to be me. And I think this video is a way to let go of all of that and just be me. So I want you to hear how bad things were for me for many years, because my hope is that it gives you hope. That if you're struggling right now, I want you to know that you're not alone, and that you're like me, and that you can turn things around just like I did. One of the most important lessons I've learned is that we never have to stay stuck in the same place in life. I sure as heck didn't. And I broke free from so much BS over and over again. And it's helped me to get where I am today. So here's my story. Here's the raw, real testament to the fact that no matter how dark things may seem, there's always a path forward. Picture this: a young girl born in Oakland in 1966, growing up in Dublin, California in the 70s and 80s. On the surface, we were a typical lower middle class family, but beneath the facade lay a world of financial chaos. To say we were always broke when I was growing up would be an understatement. My mom was a hairdresser. My dad, when he worked, was a truck dispatcher. And even though they made enough to get by, they struggled to hold on to money. They spent pretty much everything they made and then some, and the debt is where they got into trouble more than anything. We had cars repossessed. We had to sell our home to finance a business that ultimately pretty much bankrupted my parents. The bill collectors called on a regular basis for off and on throughout my childhood. And I will say my parents always managed to put food on the table, but our life was filled with a lot of stress. My dad took to selling illegal drugs on the side to make ends meet. And at some point, his good friend who had introduced him to dealing drugs got caught and went to prison for 3 years. And I remember lying awake at night, terrified that the FBI would break in and take my parents away. And it pretty much marked from, I'd say, late grade school till graduating from high school. I had that fear. It wasn't always totally rational, but that was my reality. Little did I know that these early experiences were shaping my future relationship with money in ways that couldn't understand at the time. So these experiences taught me early on that I needed to be careful with money and save for a rainy day. I felt like I had to be prepared to take care of myself in case my parents couldn't. From the outside, things might have looked fine, but inside my life was really a mess. Keep in mind that from probably 8 or 9 years old, I realized how deeply unhappy I was, perhaps because of the uncertainty at home. I'm not sure, but there were many times I thought about suicide, and it's hard for me now to remember just how unhappy I was. I didn't have a lot of friends. I got bullied a lot. I loved my family, but my younger brother and I fought like nobody's business. And there was there was nowhere for me to go where I truly felt safe. And just thinking about this, I think to myself, thank God those feelings haven't come back because it was so bad for so long. Thank goodness I was able to see through it and work really hard to make sure that I'm not that person that I was as a child growing up. It's strange to think about how adversity can be such a powerful teacher. While my peers were thinking about, their next toy or game, I was strategizing about financial security from a really young age. Because of how easily drugs were available to me with what my dad did, I started experimenting that with them in middle school. And then by ninth grade, I found myself in some really difficult situations that could have been life or death. It was a big wake up call for me. Something inside of me woke up after a series of close calls when I realized that I had a choice. I could waste away, drop out of school, continue to smoke pot at lunch, miss my classes in the afternoon, or I could get my act together and focus on my studies, maybe even go to college, even though school was really, really hard for me. I share all of this because it wasn't a given that I would figure things out and someday be able to build wealth for my family. Like, I was struggling, drinking, doing drugs, hanging out with dangerous people, always brushing up against disaster. I think I sought it actually as part of what was happening for me. And looking back, I realize now that these close calls weren't just a wake-up call. It was like life was offering me a second chance, a chance that I was determined not to waste. The facade of okay was something that I think I look back on, no matter where I turned, even though I felt terrible about myself, my life, my situation, I didn't really know how to feel better. I just kept doing what I could to pretend that everything was okay, even though it wasn't. Later, when I got my driver's license, I was really good at saving. I had started working when I was 11. I had lied about my age on a J.C. Penney's credit card and got one. And so by the time I was 16, I had a really good credit score. I had money in the bank. I was able to pay for my first car half cash, half on a loan. The only problem is that within 2 weeks of getting that first car, I totaled it. Then I did it again. I bought another car. I totaled that car in a few months. And eventually my dad helped me fix up a broken car that had been in our driveway for many years that he would help me fix up so I could take it to college. The only problem is that he told me that if I ever crashed that car, then I shouldn't come home. Ironic, isn't it? Here I was, a teenager with a credit card, saving money, buying cars, all the trappings of financial responsibility. Yet I was not feeling good inside. I'm thinking it might have had something to do with crashing the cars, but thankfully I wasn't drinking or driving. I was being irresponsible. But it goes to show you that financial skills aren't enough for true well-being. I eventually went to college, got to go to San Diego State. My choice was short-lived because I got there. I was able to get scholarships and grants, and my mom helped me a bit, but I needed to get a job. And college, that first year of college was really tough for me. I ended up changing after my first year and transferring to UC Davis. And just to be clear, to stay in college, I often would have one or two jobs. I continued to rely on the financial aid. Without them, it wouldn't have been possible. I needed money to live on. Back then, school wasn't as expensive as it is now. I feel for kids who are trying to make it work because it was hard for me and it was a lot different then. So my goal was to try and get out of college without having debt because of how important I felt it was to not start your life off with debt. So college was supposed to be my ticket to a better life. Instead, unfortunately, it became a stage for my darkest moment and ultimately my greatest turning point. All the while, keep in mind, I was still really unhappy. And then I got in a car accident my second year of college, and it was my fault. And it was pretty much the straw that broke the camel's back, remembering that my dad said I shouldn't come home if I crashed the car, sent me into a tailspin in that dark place of fear, of shame, of self-doubt. I went to the store, bought several bottles of Tylenol to try to kill myself. And, you know, it's so interesting looking back at these times because I wanted to be accepted. I wanted to do the right thing, but I didn't like myself. And, wanted to be in a relationship, but it's hard to do that when you feel bad about yourself. I felt like there was nothing to truly live for. And so I tried to end my life. Thankfully, my roommate came home, realized what I had done, and took me to the hospital to basically save my life that night. And that night in the hospital and coming out of it really became this rock bottom moment where I think I discovered that, I did have people that loved me, that I did have something to live for. And what happened next would pretty much change the rest of my life. I'm going to save that for another video, but that's what I wanted to share with you today. The background that shaped the beginning, the foundation of my understanding of money and success, that it wasn't easy, that there were times that I could have given up, but those struggles also gave me this determination to create a better life for myself. And looking back, it's hard to reconcile how miserable I was then and where I have ended up in my life now. I'm a multi-millionaire who's worked very, very, very hard to get here. And I'll share more about that as well. But as I wrap up this story, I want you to know that if you're struggling right now, you are not alone. My journey from that scared college student to a financial advisor, and to ultimately to a business owner, and a very fulfilled business owner at that, has not been straightforward or easy, but it was possible. And if I can do it, I know that you can too. So in the next video, I'll try to share more about what happened in college that would change the trajectory of my life. It's a story of resilience, of learning, of building wealth in an unexpected way, and how it's possible, and it's still possible. So until then, I want you to remember that your past does not define your future. It's what you do next that counts. And I want to thank you for listening, for watching, for your beautiful, inspiring comments. You have no idea how much you've touched me. And to the idea that we can build financial security and personal fulfillment, and that it's worth the work, it's worth the struggle, it's worth the knowledge that it takes to get there. So take care.